10 random magic cards rated, day number 121. I assure you it is 100% completely random, mostly because it's easier that way than to handpick 10 cards a day. I don't have time for that. Let's just hit random card on Scryfall. This is Root Rider Fawn. I was going to say Root Farter Fawn for a second there, but it's Root Rider Fawn from Wildsville Drain. 2 mana, one and a green. What's wrong with me today? For a 1/3 Satyr Scout, you can tap it for a green. You can pay 1 and tap it to add a mana of any old color. There's a point in Magic history. This would be fine, right? 2 mana, 1/3 tap for green, but we just have so many like better examples of this at this point. So I'm not going to give it a super high score, but I'm still going to acknowledge that mana dorks are good almost no matter what package they come in. So let's go with 4.09, something like that, for Root Rider, for Root Farter Fawn over here. I don't know why I thought it was called that. No magic card is called anything farter. So let's move on to Lava Axe. Lava Axe printed in Portal, believe it or not. I was not totally sure when this was originally printed. Originally printed into a non-starter set in Urza's Legacy, but it had to go through 2 Portal printings before that. This Portal Second Age printing is actually dope. Look at that art. Look at that Edward P. Beard. Killing it. Absolutely killing it. That's nice. That really is. But this is probably the Lava Axe art that I know the most, because then it got printed on a bunch of them after that. This is 5 mana, 4 and a red for a sorcery that deals 5 to a player. That's all the card does. You'll hear me do it a lot, right? Like I will talk about burn spells in terms of Lava Axe. This isn't even a Lava Axe. It's slightly better than a Lava Axe. I just did that with a spell the other day. That was like 6 damage to a player for 6 mana, and I'm like, oh, it's like a little bit better than the Lava Axe. Because this is sort of the standard by which all expensive burn spells are judged. And it's not even like it's like great. It was never like an amazing magic card. It just is kind of the over the top. If the burn deck gets to this point, it's going to resolve this card and win the game. But not a lot of competitive burn decks actually did that, because the lesson here is that you don't play 5 drops in your competitive burn deck most of the time. That's the idea, But I still have some love for Lava Axe, and I'm actually gonna go ahead and do it, guys. You may have heard it in my voice, the respect creeping up for this card, the memories, the love that I have for it. So I'm going to do it, especially considering it makes sense to give it the honorary 5, because it's given so many opponents the honorary 5 over the years that I think we should give that to it today. Lava Axe, I love you. You have shown up before. You very likely never will again. But there are times in Standard where I've tried to build Burn and I'm playing the games with it, and I'm kind of like, I wish I had Lava Axe right now. Seriously, there are times. I think things like, Stoke the Flames, things we have access to are just better than Lava Axe, but there are times. Miss you, buddy. Love that we finally got to do you. And I don't want to move on. I just want to stay here in this moment forever. I don't want to close my eyes. I don't want to fall asleep because I'd miss you, babe. And I don't want to miss a thing. Next card is Tower of Fortunes. This is from Mirrodin originally. This costs 4 mana for an artifact. You can pay 8 mana and tap it to draw 4 cards. That's what this card does. It's actually pretty cool. It does not cost very much to buy this card, even though it is in fact a rare. It's a rare in every printing that it's seen. But it's too expensive, right? It's just too expensive to draw 4, but you draw 4. What you have to understand about this card is that you draw 4 cards. But yeah, what you also have to understand, I think the trap here is that 8 mana is more mana than you have. It's just most of the time, right? It's more mana than you actually have. It's actually 12 mana to draw 4 cards. If you want to be cheeky about it, it's kind of 12 mana to draw 4. So 20 mana to draw 8. So when you put it in those terms, it's kind of not very good. But if you have, if you need a sink, if you need a farmhouse sink, this is the one, man. 3.7, something like that. It's just too much. It's just too much. There's got to be a better way. Mana Leak is up next, though. Originally printed in Stronghold. Let's see. Let's find out. Yeah, Stronghold. I know things. This is 2 mana, 1 on a blue for an interrupt. It's actually an instant. Counter target spell unless its caster pays an additional 3. They won't just give this card to us in standard, even though they kind of did. They gave us No More Lies, just a harder to cast Mana Leak. But trust me, Mana Leak would be better than No More Lies. Like, despite the exile clause on No More Lies, Mana Leak would be more prevalent at the very least, right? Because it could be in Simic, it could be in Dimir, whatever. And it's a very good card. This is not Counterspell, but I think this is still, in some ways, like one of the better Counterspells ever printed. Like, in the top 10? It's like, do I mean that? I kind of do. Like, the top 10 Counterspells, like, ever printed. Mana Leak is in the conversation. And if I'm being honest, what are we on? Like, Force of Will, Counterspell itself, Mana Drain, you know, like a couple of others. I guess like Pact is in the conversation. Pact and Negation is in the conversation. Bars. And there's a couple others. There really are a couple others. But Mana Leak might actually be in the top 5 or 6. It is that good. There's a reason they won't just give us the card in standard. It would rule standard. Every deck would be blue and another color and play Mana Leak. It would just be tempo. This is an unbelievable counterspell. In the last time, when it was first printed in standard, we had this and counterspell. So, like, if the control mage goes first, you lose the game. You'll never resolve a spell. This card doesn't look great to some, I think, newer players, but this card is just short of busted. It's basically counterspell for the vast majority of the game. It's just easier to cast. So I'm gonna say a 6.7 on Mana Leak, and that is mostly, the only reason that it doesn't get a higher score is because this is a casual commander kind of series for the most part. I'll go up to 6.89. I'll go up to 6.89 on this. It's obviously terrible after a few turns. It's nowhere near as good in Commander where people have big mana all the time and like they spend their first few turns setting up big mana. So it's probably not as good there where the game goes longer, right? But even then, even in Commander, like people are spending all their mana on turn 7, turn 8, turn 9. And like Mana Leak is still a good card on those turns. It really is. So I'll give Mana Leak a 7. I'll give Mana Leak a 7. You deserve that, little buddy. I think you do. And maybe even more, really. Mana Leak's very, very good. Obviously. Marsh Viper's bad. This card's from the Dark, my favorite set of all time. But the Dark is by and large not a great set. It's just, I like the way it looks, and I like the themes, and I like the expansion symbols of moon. I'm a rube. I'm a mark for all this kind of stuff. I just like the Dark, period. But Marsh Viper is 4 mana, 3 and a green for a snake. It says summon Viper. It's actually a snake. It's a 1/2, and whenever it deals damage to a player, that player gets 2 poison counters. Two poison counters. But this does, of course, cost 4 mana, and it has 2 toughness. So you don't get any ideas. You know what I mean? It is one of the very first poison counter creatures ever printed. I feel like there was like another one printed around the same time. But maybe I'm wrong. I feel like maybe I'm wrong. But yeah, it follows the same rules. If opponent has 10 or more poison counters, they lose. So I have to give this a very low score, which sucks because I still kind of like this card. I like Ron Spencer. This does not look like typical Ron Spencer art. I never knew this was Ronnie, but either way, as much as I love the Dark, it was kind of, I came in for Fallen Empires and Revised, and the Dark was like the last big set before I came in, and it was kind of a lot more expensive than Fallen Empires and Ice Age right after Fallen Empires. So I kind of clocked Fallen Empire, the Dark as like a set that I really wanted to collect, like it meant something to me. Sort of, these cards were expensive, but not as expensive as like Legends or Antiquities or the Alpha Beta, right? So it felt like attainable, but also kind of a goal at the same time. I spent a long time collecting the Dark when I first started playing, or like a year after I first started playing. So I love you, Marsh Viper, but you're just not very good. 2. I'll give this a 2, and that is all because poison counters. The only reason. Punish Ignorance from Shards of Alara. This is 4 mana, 1, 2 blue, and a black for an instant. Counter target spell. Its controller loses 3 life. You gain 3 life. So we're going to push together, undermine, and absorb. We're going to make them kiss. The only problem is that that spell costs 4 mana. That spell is going to cost you 4 mana for a counter spell, so it's not good. It just isn't good. There are decent 4 mana counter spells. I'm not going to say there aren't. Mostly when you get to 4 mana, counter spells right out. But there are times where we have stooped to doing that, depending on how good the icing on that cake is, man. Buttercream, let's go. So Punish Ignorance, on the other hand, is not great. It isn't. You would just rather play Absorb most of the time. Undermine has taught us, or taught me and everyone else that was playing during Invasion, that 3 life on their end, dealing 3 life to them, or making them lose 3, is not good. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't affect the number of cards in your hand or the number of cards on the table. Your life is a resource. You're a control deck. They're probably going to scoop to your inevitability rather than you actually reducing their life total to 0. The 3 life here is completely negligible. Completely negligible. And you might get the idea like, oh, I'm going to play 4 of these and 4 undermines, and I will counter 8 spells, and I'll win the game off of life loss. That's not going to happen. I promise you, we've all tried it. It's not going to happen. And this is in a 3-color deck. Like, Esper just has better things to do at 4 mana. So I hate to poop on this counterspell so much because it's obviously very cool. And you see how cool the art is by Shelly Wan here. Amazing, right? But this card is like a 3.6. It really is. It sadly is. If it were Absorb, it would be like a 5. But you add a mana to absorb and a color too. You add a color and a mana to absorb and make it do something that really kind of doesn't matter in the decks that want a card like this. And like suddenly it's just kind of actively bad. So you could just be doing so many better things. Next is Makindi Ox. Take my ox. This is 5 mana. Sorry. I haven't made myself laugh with one of my own stupid jokes in a while, but that one was so bad that it got me. 5 mana, 4 and a white for a 4/4 Ox with landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, tap a creature an opponent controls. So you see how it's not as good as a lot of other landfall things. I do like the Zendikar Rising like promo here, the alternate art by Roman Kutenikov. I think I nailed it. Okay, probably not, but we'll see. I do like the art on this one. That's cool. He's a big, like, blocky man, and I like the way I like the technique on the background. I like how the clouds look and the color palette they chose. But I have resorted to talking about the art so quickly that you can tell. The card's not that good. Even with my soft spot for landfall, the card's just not very good. So let's go with a 2.3. Landfall abilities are No, let's go with a 2.7 because landfall abilities are landfall abilities. And it's a 5 mana 4/4. It could be worse. Swamp is up next. Basic lands get a 5 and don't count. Sweet art right here by Nikola Metkovic. Really sick art. Is this from Fallout? It is from Fallout. How did I know? Because it looks like it's from Fallout. Next is Soul Ring. We've already done Soul Ring. And I think we gave Soul Ring like a 9 point... somewhere between like a 9.5 and a 9.7 or something. And like, everyone was so mad we didn't get a 10. It's like... Black Lotus is a 10. Ancestral Recall is a 10, right? The Moxen are a 10. Like, there are 10s. We're coming up on them, right? But, like, Soul Ring is just under those cards. I can't... It's not... It's, like, one of the best cards ever printed, though. I think we can all agree. We can all agree. Next card is Balin the Haymaker. Look at this sick Bloomborough promo right here, dude. For $178. That's, that's not that much, considering you can also get a copy of the card for $1. Just 178 times more than what because it's actually $178. Just 178 times more than you can get this version of the card for. It's not that big of a deal. This is 3 mana. It's Naya colors, so red, green, white for a 4/3 legendary rabbit warrior. Tap 2 untapped tokens you control to add a mana of any color. Tap 3 untapped tokens you control to draw a card. Tap 4 untapped tokens you control. Put 3 +1/+1 counters on Balin, and it gains trample until end of turn. So I still think this card has time to do a thing in Standard. I really do. It's already shown up in some Commander decks that I've kind of seen out there on the internet. Not just content creators making decks when Bloomborough first came out, but it seems to have had some staying power outside of just... when we could call it recency bias. And I guess we probably still could, but I still hear chatter about it. I still see people making decks, both where it is the commander and excited to put it in the 99 of like Naya tokens builds with Yetmir and stuff. So, I do like this card a good bit. I think in terms of like rate for stats, you're doing okay. 3 mana, 4/3, right? It draws cards, and it's easy to engineer a situation where it replaces itself by drawing a card the turn it comes into play. Also easy to see a situation where you play it and it immediately enables you to play another spell by tapping, 2 to 4 tokens when it comes into play. So I think there's just a lot of really cool stuff about this. I think it may have its day in standard if it gets exactly the right deck. But in terms of being a powerful commander, I think it gets a couple of points. In terms of being good in the 99 of Naya tokens decks, it gets a couple of points, right? And again, unique commander points for me. Just a little bit here. So I'm going to give Balin a 5.37. 5.37 for Bay over here. He certainly is Bay, is he not? But last card of the day is Bone Meiser from Commander 2019. We've done this card. We've actually, because it struck me that this is actually a waste knot on a creature that cares about you discarding cards rather than your opponent. Yeah, we've done this, and it's actually very good. So good job. Bone Miser's awesome. Actual last card is Ezuri, Claw of Progress from Commander 2015. This is 4 mana, 2 a green and a blue for a 3/3 legendary elf warrior. Whenever a creature with power 2 or less enters the battlefield under your control, you get an experience counter. Okay. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put X +1/+1 counters on another target creature you control. X being the number of experience counters that you have. I have heard a lot of tale of this card, and it's still like $1 to get the lowest priced version of it. So, I guess people are ordering it. But again, maybe it's Mythic, But it's Mythic in a Commander product. What does that mean? Anyway, I have heard people on the internet be like, "Oh, this goes in my Ezuri deck." Like in the comments to my videos or like on Twitter, I'll be like, "Oh, Azuri's gonna like this. Oh, Ezuri, I would have got an Ezuri deck cooking." And I don't know that I've ever actually sought the card out, looked the card up. I've never played against this card in my life. None of my commander folks have ever built a deck around Ezuri. So I did not know that's what this did. But that's a pretty good ability, right? Whenever a small guy, like a token or a little boy, a little guy enters under your control, you get an experience counter. So pretty easy to get a ton of experience counters if you have good token generation or just even just Beast Whisperer, right? I play a creature, draw a card, play a creature, draw a card, play a creature, draw a card, and I'm getting experience counters the whole time. That's pretty gross. And then that means that you can make those small dudes really huge pretty quickly. If it has relevance the turn it comes into play, if you can get another couple of creatures out, you'll play it, it'll die, but you'll have gotten a couple of experience counters, right? So you'll play it again out of the command zone, and it'll, keep adding on to those experience counters. So even if you have to pay 8 mana to cast it out of the command zone, at that point you built up enough experience counters that it'll do something the turn you cast it. So I do like that. A lot of cool things about this. Fun to build a deck around, I'm sure. So I'm going to give Ezuri a audience. Ask the audience first of all. I will rate the card, but what do you, because I feel like we'll get a pretty good spread, right? Because I know people have a lot of love for this card. I'm going to give this a 5.68. A 5.68. That first line of text, there's I think there's other stuff that cares about experience counters, but that first line of text is going to lead to a ton of experience counters. And even if your opponent's kill him, he can come back and still do the thing. So yeah, I think he's actually kind of great. I think there's a reason why people like the guy so much, but that is all for today. Man, we had some long ones lately, haven't we? We're approaching 20 minutes now on every video. And you guys, I've seen you in the comments, you little freaks. You love it. You love it. Every time a video hits 20 minutes, you're like, "Oh, it's a long one. Let's go." So maybe you just have long lunch breaks and I need to fill those out as much as possible. Either way, I'm just glad that you choose to spend some time every day with me. I appreciate that, man. I'll see you again tomorrow. Bye. I missed the button. I missed hitting the record button. So I looked kind of silly there for a second. Bye.